Christina and the Complete Jew, a novel by Dr. A. Ahmed. This story continues the narration of the story of the Arab sugar daddy and the beautiful Indian girl, and the story of the Indian child bride and the old Arab husband, and the story of the Indian Miss World and the rage of Muslims of the world. They were written in English and translated into Arabic by Dr. A. Ahmed. It is a love story narrated in 6 books. Book 4, In Search of a Companion in Her Lonely Life, copyright. All rights are reserved. No part of this book may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means without the prior written permission of the author except by the reviewer, who may cite brief passages from the review for printing in a magazine, newspaper, school journal, or university article. All characters in this novel are fictional, and any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, is purely coincidental. Chapter 26. The Faithful Soulmate and Spiritual Lover. The abused American wife Christina Fernandez, who was assumed by all to have become a madwoman, has not only been rejected and betrayed by her Muslim mother, but her Christian husband has also distanced himself from her. If he had left her alone to face her mental sickness, it might have been tolerable, but Bruno and his sisters have spread very malicious rumors about her in the church and made every Christian brother and sister believe their words. Somehow, they came to know that she had been admitted into a mental hospital on one of the outskirts of Mumbai known as Vashi, which is also called New Bombay. Not surprisingly, Bruno and his 2 sisters Nat, Lynn, and Sylvia visited her. After that, they returned to the church and spread their spiritual interpretations of what had happened to Sister Christina. According to them, she had given a foothold to Satan and opened herself to demonic attacks because she left her lawful Christian husband and began to live with a white guy in a shameful and open adulterous relationship. They further claimed that, for that reason, God had delivered her up to Satan to destroy her body. They said further that when they visited her in the mental hospital, they found her with long shackles on her hands and around her body. There are strong constraints fastened to her legs, and she is being chained to her bed and fed like a wild beast in a cage at the zoo. She looked like a white witch and a dirty bitch, and her hair is disheveled like a madwoman. She always tears her clothes, exposes her nakedness, and bites anyone who comes within range. She screams constantly and speaks unintelligible language just like that of a lunatic and demon-possessed woman. She often breaks the chains, and the mental hospital staff finds it difficult to restrain her. The spirit of the Phoenician Queen Jezebel possessed her, and many demons of rage and unclean spirits of lust and adultery have infiltrated her body. They concluded their spiritual report by saying that she is having a legion of demons inside her body. In the Bible, a legion is equal to 6,100 devils. Their report led many church leaders and believers to take a trip to that mental asylum and confirmed the rumors about the so-called demon-possessed white witch and dirty bitch. The mental hospital became like a tourist attraction to the members of that born-again and spirit-filled church. Many mothers took their daughters over there to show them the dire consequences of disobeying the word of God and committing adultery. Some fathers accompanied their sons to the mental hospital and showed them the punishment for committing premarital or extramarital sex. Even the senior pastor of the church used the demon-possessed backslidden Christian woman's case as a practical example for preaching about marital unfaithfulness. On one Sunday, he preached from the pulpit a long sermon on marriage and adultery, mentioned her by name, and referred to her white boyfriend by ethnicity. The wife of the senior pastor, who herself is a female pastor, also claimed to be among the 3 righteous women who caught the adulterous wife in bed with the handsome white guy when the 2 were stark naked and committing adultery. Upon hearing the new rumors, she shouted hallelujah from the rooftop of her house, and then she rose a red flag. Therefore, she has openly challenged her husband and other male leaders. She said they must stand before the congregation in the church and repent of their sins of doubting her report of the confirmed adultery of Sister Christina. Her husband and the other 7 pastors begged her on their knees to forgive them and not to expose their sins of unbelief before other believers. Reluctantly, the holy woman of God and the other 2 female pastors have accepted their apologies and repentance and forgiven them. Only a few compassionate believers have pity on Sister Christina and visit her many times and attempt to cast the demons out of her possessed body, but every time their attempts fail. All members of that church collectively believe that the Lord had delivered Christina Fernandez to the devil to destroy her body because of her disgraceful and open adultery which she committed with the handsome white guy. By the way, a few days after Christina got admitted to the mental hospital in the Vashi area in Navi Mumbai, a great disaster occurred and wrecked the lives of the Fernandez clan. Brother Bruno considered his life had come to an end when he heard the disturbing news from the American consulate that his American wife had officially canceled her sponsorship for him and his parents and blocked forever their pilgrimage to the Promised Land. He had not only lost the golden opportunity of flying to his promised paradise, but he lost his job too. Because of that, his faith in the Lord had been seriously shaken. Upon hearing the incredible news, his mother, Mrs. Fernandez, lost her mind completely when her son informed her that his wife had canceled her sponsorship on the same day she ran away from his apartment and began to live with the adulterous white man. Therefore, Christina's mother-in-law started to talk to herself as a lunatic woman. She also began to beat and bite any of her relatives whenever they came close to her. Consequently, she had also been declared a madwoman by her children and confined in a dark room in her house. The incredible report about the rejection of their applications to their overseas trip to the Promised Land had caused her husband, Mr. Fernandez, to have a major heart attack and died after a few hours at the Nanavati hospital. Following that big family catastrophe, Brother Bruno not only lost his American wife, mad mother, and dead father, but he permanently lost his job in Mumbai. Moreover, his life dream of immigrating to the Promised Land, the land that flows with money and honey and eternal happiness, had gone forever. It is an unbearable disaster for the proud Fernandez clan. Although she had been publicly disowned by her Muslim mother, hated by her Christian husband, got despised by her in-laws, and condemned as a fallen whore and demon-possessed woman by her church, still her American lover and spiritual boyfriend has not left her. Michael has neither forsaken her nor has he ceased visiting his beloved Indian girlfriend even for a single day. He has determined neither to allow her to die like a lonely and abandoned girl in her filthy cell of the mental hospital nor to forsake her in India and return to America without her. Michael has decided to continue living in Mumbai indefinitely and every day visits his beloved Indian girlfriend in her small room in the mental hospital. As soon as she became mentally sick, he began to pray and fast for her healing. He is spending many hours in her apartment fasting, praying, and interceding for her. Whenever he visited her in her mental asylum, he played his guitar, sang her favorite hymns, and read some verses of the Bible which promised divine healing. Every time he tried to communicate with her, she saw him as a ghost and went berserk. She could not recognize him as her American lover. Despite this, it is not in Michael to give up on her. He approached the mental hospital authority and requested to be allowed to transfer her to an American mental health facility for better medical treatment. He promised to cover the expenses of her overseas transfer. The Mental Hospital Administration Office rejected his application because the female patient was not related to him. He tried to convince them to allow him to take her on humanitarian grounds, but they refused. He even lied to them and tried to take her as his common-law partner or his female conjugal partner. But the hospital authority rejected his application because they already had on file that Mrs. Christina Fernandez was married to someone by the name of Bruno Fernandez. Besides that, common-law partners and conjugal partners are not recognized as legitimate relations between unmarried lovers in India. Michael informed the hospital that the marital relationship between Christina and her Indian husband Bruno was broken before her mental problem. They asked him to bring official proof that her Christian husband had divorced her or permitted him to take his Indian wife to America. Michael Lewinsky went to Mr. Bruno Fernandez in the church and requested him to either divorce Christina or permit him to transfer her to America for better treatment. Brother Bruno rejected the request of the American lover and accused him of being the reason behind his Indian wife forsaking him and canceling her sponsorship for him and his parents to the USA. He also said to him in front of everyone in the church after the Sunday service is over, "My wife is possessed by demons of lust because of her adulterous relationship with you." Of course, the complete Jew Michael denied the false allegation and tried to convince Brother Bruno and the leaders of the church that he knew Christina from America and she stayed in his grandparents' house before her conversion, and through him, she came to know the Lord. He also said she forsook Islam and accepted Christianity in his parents' home, got baptized, and changed her name to Christina in his church in the States. He said further that he and Christina are only good friends, and there is not any sex involved or any other form of carnal relation between the two of them, but no one believed his story. The church leadership rejected his justification of living with someone's wife in the same apartment and told him never to come again to their holy sanctuary and spirit-filled church, or otherwise, they will hand him over to the ruthless Indian police officers. Michael has not given up. From the Bandra church, he traveled to the Mumbai town and went to the biggest mosque and talked to its imam, the Mullah Sheikh al-Din Khan, in front of his entire congregation. He requested him to allow him to meet his wife, Begum Rehanaji. He explained that he wanted to obtain the permission of Christina's mother to transfer her mentally sick daughter to the United States of America for better treatment. That day, the angry mullah is supposed to kill the Christian infidel boy on the spot if it is not for the many faithful Muslims who are present inside the prayer hall, and he understands that Michael is a white foreigner. Nevertheless, he controlled his boiling rage and talked to the American young man. He told him that his third wife, Begum Rehanaji Khan, had never given birth to a female in all her life, and she had already testified in court that she had no daughter. Besides that, his wife Rehana Khan was born and brought up as a Muslim, and that accursed infidel girl, when she came to his residence, said her name was Christina Fernandez and had admitted in front of many Muslim men and women she was a Christian girl. Accordingly, that girl is either mentally retarded or got bribed with a huge amount of money by some bad people to drag his righteous Muslim wife again to court and bring disgrace to his family. Michael tried to clear the misunderstanding, but the wicked imam threatened that he was going to hand him over to the Muslim policemen of Mumbai town if he ever approached him again. When Michael refused to yield to the threats and continued to beg for mercy, the mullah shouted at him, cursed him, and kicked him out of his mosque. Because he said he was an American citizen, the dangerous religious leader was scared to order his terrorists to slaughter Michael. He expected the American CIA and the Hindu police would burn him alive with his Muslim adherents inside his mosque if his terrorists killed an American young man. That day, the American boy felt as if he entered the den of terrorists and was miraculously rescued by the Lord. Finally, Michael Lewinsky went to the government of Maharashtra and explained to them the problem of his mentally sick Indian girlfriend and requested them to be allowed to take her to the United States of America for better medical treatment. He judiciously withheld the fact that Christina Fernandez is a married woman and her husband is an Indian. He just said that she is his Indian girlfriend and she used to live with him in his Jewish house in America. He even provided evidence to show that when he came to Mumbai he stayed with her in her place at Bandra and that she is his common-law partner and, until the present time, he is living in her rented apartment. It so happened that when Michael approached the government of Maharashtra, India had just a couple of days earlier recognized the relationship of the common-law partners. The new law was passed by the Bandra Court of Marriage and Divorce on the grounds of the lawsuit that had been filed by high-profile lovers. They are among the top heroines and heroes in the film industry. They are a Bollywood film actress called Kareena Kapoor, a Hindu, and her boyfriend, the film star Saif Ali Khan, a Muslim. Due to their religious differences, which stood in the way of their religious marriage, the lovers decided to live as common-law partners. Accordingly, it was nothing short of divine intervention or a miracle of the Lord when the similar case of the American lover Michael Lewinsky and his Indian girlfriend Christina Fernandez reached the government of Maharashtra. Michael added that when they came to India to visit a church in Mumbai, his girlfriend had developed a serious mental sickness. The government believed his story and approved his request for her overseas transfer for medical reasons. When the Mental Hospital Authority received an official letter from the government of Maharashtra endorsing its approval of the transfer, it allowed Michael Lewinsky to take Christina Fernandez to America for better medical treatment. Chapter 27. The Cowardly Muslim Terrorist Attack and Brutal Gang Rape. Despite the big disaster of his married life, the loss of his father and job, and the madness of his mother, Brother Bruno's dead hope of immigrating to the Promised Land was resurrected again when someone in the church gave him smart advice. The advisor is a self-ordained prophet and claimed to be anointed by the Holy Spirit. He said he has received a word of knowledge and wisdom from the Lord for his brother in Christ, Bruno Fernandez. He told him to take his mad wife Christina to America on the grounds of receiving better medical treatment. Before that, the frustrated husband wished his adulterous American wife should die a horrible death in her filthy cell in the mental asylum as divine retributions for canceling her sponsorship application, which caused the untimely death of his father, the madness of his mother, and the loss of his highly paid job. Besides that, the death of his life dream of immigrating to the Promised Land has gone forever. Now he found a golden opportunity to use his demon-possessed American wife as a passage for him to reach the land that flows with money and honey. Accordingly, he approached the American consulate and demanded the reissue of his canceled immigrant visa so that he could transfer his mentally sick American wife to her country for better medical treatment. The consulate rejected his demand and informed him that his wife came in person and said that her relationship with her husband had been broken and she was planning to file for a divorce. Unless she comes again and retreats her words, the consulate in no uncertain terms can issue visas for him and his parents. When that door is shut in his face, Brother Bruno goes to Vashi's mental hospital and decided to play the same game over there. The selfish husband's anger and hatred towards his demon-possessed wife are intensified when he knows that his hope of reaching his paradise is dashed forever again. He learned from the Vashi Hospital Authority that his mad wife Christina Fernandez is no longer a patient in their mental hospital. They said she had been transferred by her American boyfriend Michael Lewinsky to the USA just a couple of days ago. Bruno became extremely angry with the Mental Hospital Authority for allowing an American guy to kidnap his Indian wife and smuggle her out of the country. At first, the Mental Hospital Authority tried to convince him that they received an official letter from the government of Maharashtra state endorsing the overseas transfer of his wife through her American boyfriend. But when the outraged husband continued to argue and fight with them, they called the police officers on him. The police officers hammered him with their police batons and then got him kicked out in an undignified manner. Anyhow, during her fight with her stepfather and her attempt to get a court divorce, Christina visited a popular Hindu lawman, which she knew when she used to live with her Hindu mother Rani Krishna. At that time, he was her lawyer. The same Hindu man had handled some of her legal lawsuits which she submitted against her former evil captors, Sheikh Firoz bin Ahmed and Mahmud Khan. In those days, she was known as Aphrodite Krishna Khan. The popular Hindu man of the law did not recognize her Christian name until she showed him some official papers to prove that she had changed her name to Christina Fernandez. She said further she did that after her conversion to Christianity and marrying a Christian man. That day she came to know that her lawyer was able to win her overseas case against her former Saudi husband's wives and his many Arab sons and daughters. Accordingly, the lawyer broke the good news that he was able to sell her inherited 15-story building in the city of Jeddah for $25 million. Therefore, the Hindu lawman accompanied his valuable American female client to the State Bank of India and transferred that huge amount of money to her overseas account. Christina agreed to give her Hindu lawyer $50,000, which he claimed to be his due fees. Therefore, the persecuted American wife's bank balance that day reached $120 million. Then Christina wrote a check, paid her lawyer's fees, and left. When she returned home, she did not mention anything about her new bulging bank balance to her selfish husband or his greedy parents or his two wicked sisters. After that, the popular Hindu lawman continued to fight the legal case against her wicked stepfather, the Mullah Sheikh al-Din Khan. After her breakdown in the Mumbai courtroom, the lawyer lost touch with her. Howbeit, Christina's visit to her former lawyer that day exposed her hidden identity and her hiding place to the Muslim terrorists of Dawood Ibrahim. Those ruthless Muslim terrorists had never forgotten the former Miss World who referred to their holy prophet Muhammad as my foot or her shoe, and she also threatened to spit on their sacred Quran. They determined to punish her for her blasphemy no matter where she went. They decided even if she was dead and gone they must exhume her remains out of her grave and pee on them. Or if she went to the moon they must bring her down to earth, kill her, and then burn her corpse into ashes. Accordingly, that day, when Christina visited her lawyer and revealed her former name and her current address in Mumbai, one of the employees of the famous Hindu attorney happened to be a Muslim man. That Muslim employee recognized Christina as soon as he saw her. He understood she was the same Indian beauty queen who became Miss World in London and spoke disrespectfully about his beautiful religion of Islam. At that time, she insulted his holy Quran by spitting on it and called his prophet Muhammad my dirty shoe. So, he waited until his boss left his office and went to his house. Then, he went to his office and obtained the new name and address of the blasphemous woman. It happened that the address he found was Bruno's parents' house address. Christina had not updated her address. When she obtained a new passport under her husband's last name, she used her in-laws' address. After some time, the Muslim spy found one of his Muslim friends who had a connection with Dawood Ibrahim's gang, and through him, he passed the new name and address of the hiding Miss World Aphrodite Krishna Khan to one of the terrorist leaders. Consequently, shortly after the so-called demon-possessed American wife was transferred to the States, the Fernandez clan had 3 unwanted guests. Each one is holding a loaded pistol and a long dagger. When those Muslim terrorists showed up in the house, there were Bruno and his 2 sisters Nat, Lynn, and Sylvia. After his wife ran away from his apartment, Bruno vacated the place and moved back into his parents' house. At that time, their father had recently died of a major heart attack, and their mad mother was confined in a dark room. The other 3 brothers are at work. The terrorists demanded to know where the former Miss India called their holy prophet Muhammad my foot, and she also spat on their sacred religious book of the Quran. They threatened to rape the 2 unmarried sisters if Bruno will not tell them where his wife Christina Fernandez has gone and when she is expected back home. In fear and trembling, the frightened husband spoke the truth and disclosed that his wife had deserted him and eloped with a white man. For that reason, God punished her by allowing thousands of demons to possess her defiled and unholy body and made her a dangerous lunatic woman who is kept confined under lock and key in a mental hospital. Such a story sounded like fiction rather than truth to those Muslim terrorists. They thought that Bruno wanted to fool them with such an unbelievable story. They concluded that he loves his wife so much and for that reason, he wants to save her life. Therefore, they decided to rape one of the 2 virgin sisters so they can force her brother to reveal the hiding place of his blasphemous wife. Bruno's sisters are 17 and 19-year-old Mangalorean girls. They always boasted among their girlfriends that they were sealed virgins and none of them had sex with any guy or not even practiced masturbation. Of course, whenever they boasted about their chastity, they referred to their brother's wife Christina and called her the waif of Bollywood and a dirty whore who had sex with many men before she married their chaste brother. They also called her the white witch and a dirty bitch. Recently, they began to refer to her as the demon-possessed American wife and the adulterous woman. The first sister to be brutally raped is Nat Lynn, who is a 19-year-old girl. She must suffer the terror and the shame in front of her brother and the other sister. She must bear the brunt of 3 savage rapes. Bruno closes his eyes because he does not want to see the nakedness of his virgin sister. He hears her crying when her virginity has been violently robbed and her chaste body defiled by 2 Muslim terrorists, and he can do nothing to rescue her. After that, he told the terrorists new information about his mad and demon-possessed wife, which made them more furious. Through sobs, he said he came to know from the Washi mental asylum that his mad wife had flown to America a few days ago for better medical treatment. The ruthless terrorists refused to believe his new story and threatened to rape his small sister Sylvia. Consequently, when no new information is revealed, the 17-year-old girl is next. She has got brutally raped by 2 terrorists. After the rape of the two sisters, the Muslim terrorists must admit that the husband of the blasphemous wife is of no more use to them. So, they spared his life and left. But before their departure, one of the three terrorists placed a sharp dagger on Bruno's throat. He said to him with a husky voice like that of an ogre that if they come to know that his blasphemous wife is hiding somewhere, they will first cut his penis, and then they shall rape his infidel woman in front of his eyes as they have done today with his two sisters. After that, they will kill him, slaughter her, and burn their corpses together. The extremely frightened man Bruno Fernandez peed in his clothes before the sharp dagger was removed from his neck. Sadly, when the Bandra police officers were called in and the church leadership was notified, the religious commitment and belief of Brother Bruno and the two sisters Nat Lynn and Sylvia were seriously damaged. The terrorist attack and double rapes have shaken the believers of that born-again and spirit-filled church. The cowardly terrorist attack and rapes on the Fernandez daughters have been religiously and ethically interpreted. The 8 pastors of the church and their wives who are top female leaders, even some of the congregation could not deal with the trauma and simply attributed the horrors of the terrorist rapes to what made sense to them. Given their simple religious understanding, the two sisters who were brutally raped by the sons of the devil are not living a righteous life, and that was why the Lord allowed evil to befall them. There must be some hidden sins in their lives, and that is why they gave a foothold to Satan and opened themselves to the Islamic demonic attacks. Of course, according to all leaders and believers, the only sins that led to such immoral and sexual terrorist attacks must be the sins of adultery or premarital sex. Their brother Bruno, who was untouched by the Muslim terrorists, must have been living a holy life that pleased his Lord, and so was spared. Therefore, Brother Bruno has been counted very righteous believer and the holiest man of God in the Fernandez clan because the children of the devil spared him their evil retribution. Unfair as it is, the two sisters Nat Lynn and Sylvia have stopped attending the church after they heard the spiritual interpretations of their terrorist attack and multiple rapes by the children of the devil. They did not like the nasty accusations hurled at them by their fellow Christian brethren and sisters in the Lord. Moreover, the two sisters knew no Christian boys are going to marry them in that church after every believer came to know the Mangalorean two sisters Nat Lynn and Sylvia had been raped simultaneously by 3 men and lost their virginities. Of course, the Fernandez clan has attributed the cause of the new family disaster and terrorist attack and double rapes on the innocent two sisters Nat Lynn and Sylvia to the so-called demon-possessed white witch and dirty bitch. The 3 Fernandez brothers have also interpreted what had happened to their 2 holy sisters spiritually. According to them, the brutal terrorist rapes were backlashes of the thousands of unclean evil spirits of the demon-possessed Muslim bitch who falsely claimed had become a Christian girl and changed her name from Ifit Khan to Christina Lewinsky. Chapter 28. The hidden causes of the mental trauma of Christina. Eventually, her American boyfriend's sincere efforts have yielded their fruits, and he has been able to transfer his mentally sick Indian girlfriend to his native country. At the time Christina Fernandez was transferred from her Mumbai mental hospital to the one Michael Lewinsky had selected in the United States, she had already spent 1 month in a catatonic state. In the States, her condition has been more accurately diagnosed and treated. As her American lover predicted, she began to receive much better medical treatment in his country. After spending a couple of months in therapy, Christina began to show signs of improvement. She does not fear people anymore. She stopped seeing scary things. Human beings no longer look like scary ghosts, vampires, and zombies to her. Her recovery is painfully slow, but she is no longer shackled to her bed. She is still confined to a private room in a good mental hospital. The hospital staff allowed her boyfriend to visit her inside her room if she was calm. During his visits, Christina does not react to his presence, staring vacantly at him without any sign of recognizing him. After 6 months of care, the mental health care professionals declared Christina mentally sound. They cautioned that the trauma of her situation had resulted in her subconsciously blocking off large chunks of her memories, and she is not likely to regain her memory again. During the time of his Indian girlfriend's mental and psychological illness, Michael Lewinsky, through his careful search on the internet, had stumbled upon her past life and learned a great deal about her kidnap, rape, and imprisonment in Asmara, Tehran, and Mumbai. He actively participated in her therapy and played an active role in investigating how her past trauma had contributed to her mental condition. He never once believed, unlike her Christian husband and Indian church leaders and other believers, that demons possess her. Neither did he believe that the act of her mother's public denial and betrayal alone would have resulted in the trauma of this degree. He remembered that when they were in the Jewish home of his grandparents, she told him that she won Miss Mumbai, Miss India, and Miss World. In addition, she informed him about her successful role in acting as a leading heroine in a Bollywood great hit movie. Moreover, he recollected that while they were sitting by the blue lakeshore, she told him that she had around $95 million. He also knew that Christina was deeply in love with him, and she wanted to spend the rest of her life with him. Michael figured that a successful and high-profile girl like Christina, who has many millions of dollars, would not feel so rejected and neglected just because her mother had disowned her in court and before everybody. Her abusive Christian marital life could not be the catalyst to her breakdown either, because he noticed that she was managing her life as well as could be expected. He suspected that there was something deeper than those overt family problems. Therefore, he used her former name, Aphrodite Krishna Khan, which she used before her conversion to Hinduism and Christianity, and he began another thorough search on the internet. His search revealed startling discovery, which confirmed his doubts. First, he came across her live interview that she made in public on the Stink News channel when she was accused of being a Bollywood high-profile prostitute. Through that interview, he came to know about her first child marriage abuse by the 70-year-old Saudi man, Sheikh Faiz bin Ahmed. He learned that when she was a 7-year-old female child, on the pretension of the Islamic halal marriage of underage girls, the old man kidnapped, imprisoned, and raped her for a long 10 years. After that, she was kidnapped by the Bollywood film director, Mahmood Khan, who imprisoned her in his farmhouse and tortured and raped her through his sadistic sexual tendency for over a year. Shortly after her release from the farmhouse of her Indian captor, she was accused of the charge of character assassination or defamation of a Bollywood film director and jailed for a year in Mumbai and Pune women's prisons and got raped by many top officials. After the suicidal death of her second captor, who nailed her with that false accusation, the charge against her was dropped and she was released from prison after she completed 11 months in jail. After that, Michael learned that Christina was adopted by a Hindu mother, known as Rani Krishna. At that time, began her golden period of success during which she was crowned Miss Mumbai, Miss India, and finally Miss World. During that golden period, she suddenly became an extraordinarily rich girl. Michael could not believe that her crowning as Miss World and her adoption by a Hindu mother could make her such a wealthy Indian girl who is close to $100 million. Her sudden windfall of great wealth became an inexplicable mystery for him. Michael remembered that Christina told him when they were in America that she inherited her millions of dollars and overseas properties from her wealthy father. Her story on the internet, however, did not mention that she had a wealthy father who died and left her millions of dollars. She seemed to be a lonely girl who was forsaken by her Muslim mother when she was 7 years old. At that time, she said, her mother was a mere maidservant in a Saudi household employ. Her lover discovered that in her public interview, Aphrodite mentioned that she was born to poor Muslim parents in a slum area called Dharavi in Mumbai. After that, the American boyfriend learned his Indian girlfriend ran into trouble with the Islamic terrorists who tried to assassinate her due to the controversial remarks she made about the Prophet Muhammad and the Quran at the time of her crowning Miss World in London. Her controversial statement does not make sense to Michael. He could not see that calling the Prophet Muhammad my foot was any sort of insult. He believes that his girlfriend was supposed to call the Prophet Muhammad a pedophile instead of my foot. Michael believed that Muslims of the world were supposed to be happy when his girlfriend had likened their prophet to her foot because that sounded like an honor to him. For him, for the Prophet of Islam to be likened to the foot of Miss World is an honor for Muhammad rather than a disgrace. Here the American boy failed to understand that by prophet is my foot Indians mean to say, prophet is my ass. Therefore, it was understood by Indian Muslims as an insult and blasphemy for their so-called infallible prophet who was assumed to have been sent by God as a mercy to mankind. Anyway, Michael learned that due to that controversial remark, Miss World Aphrodite Krishna Khan was forced to flee for her life. She fled from India to Germany and after 2 months immigrated to America to hide from the Muslim terrorists. After a few years, the Islamic terrorists discovered her hiding place in the States and assassinated her Muslim husband Jamal Khan and her daughter Rayhana. In short, Michael Lewinsky learned many things about his Indian girlfriend Christina Fernandez that she had never mentioned to him when she met him at his grandparents' house. He concluded that those years of abuse, rape, torture, and captivity continued to be stored in the backside of her mind. They were boiling in her mind like molten lava in a volcano. The pressure the events brought to bear on her mind had been tremendous. She had to cope with them so that she could function daily. For many years, the hidden and suppressed small girl, who was called Ifat Khan, waited for her Muslim mother Rayhana Khan to return to her life and restore the love that she could not find from her Hindu mother Rani Krishna or buy it through her great wealth of millions of dollars. In the back of her mind, the small Ifat Khan continued to believe that her Muslim mother was supposed to feel guilty for taking her to Saudi Arabia. Then, her mother got charged as a prostitute and landed in a Saudi women's jail, sentenced to be stoned to death, and left her without anyone to protect her in an Arab country full of sexually perverted men. Therefore, at the age of 7, she had fallen as a victim in the hands of that wicked old Arab man who abused, raped, imprisoned, and tortured her for 10 years. That day, in the Mumbai courtroom, the abused Ifat Khan came to the surface and expected her Muslim mother Rayhana Khan to recognize her and apologize for forsaking her. She only longed for a kiss, a hug, and one word of comfort in line with the image of the mother that she carried with her all this time. She still saw her Muslim mother with the same eyes as the 7-year-old girl Ifat. However, the public denial and rejection by her mother removed the one thing keeping her sanity. The image of her mother that had been her strength and comfort no longer existed. It was the straw that broke the camel's back. Her mother's denial was the crack that the molten lava was waiting for to erupt in her mind. All her past and present abusive and bitter experiences with those wicked men, namely Sheikh Ahmed, Mahmood Khan, Rahul Patel, and Bruno Fernandes, had found their way to the surface of her mind and erupted like a gigantic volcano. In her confused state, memory and reality collided. Where she had successfully compartmentalized sections of her past in safe areas, they now burst forth, manifesting themselves as her new reality. Her mind began to play tricks on her, and she started to see and hear scary things. She saw all humans without exception as scary ghosts. To protect herself, she would become berserk, slash out, defend herself, and sometimes become violent and go on the offensive. Michael Lewinsky has been able to analyze his Indian girlfriend's mental breakdown in the above understanding. Whether he is right or wrong is hard to tell. But one thing is for sure, through his love, sacrifice, prayers, and fasting, he was able to take her out of the deep ocean of darkness that engulfed her mind for many months to the bright shore of hope and love. Yes, she lost her memory and forgot he was her lover, but still, he considered her sickness to be a blessing in disguise. She is freed from those painful memories of the abused slum girl Ifat Khan. After Christina's discharge from the mental hospital, Michael brought her to the safest place he knew of, the Jewish home where they first met and fell in love, the home of his loving grandparents. He began to fill her heart once again with his love. He rode his horse with her and took her many times to the beautiful Blue Lake. He often played lovely music on his guitar for her, sang her favorite hymns, read the promising and encouraging verses of the Holy Bible, and prayed and fasted for her. When Christina recovered, recognized him, and responded to his ministrations, he betrothed to marry her in a holy Christian matrimonial union. However, the two did not tie the knot until Christina completed her treatment and fully regained her memory. By this time, she has already spent over 2 years away from her selfish Christian husband, Bruno Fernandes. She applied for a divorce, resulting in the American court sending a divorce notification to India to her Christian husband, but did not receive any reply. Regardless, the court granted her a divorce in absentia. Although Christina is now divorced and free to marry her lover, Michael uncovered one important problem that needs rectification. He discovered that the many months his beloved Indian girlfriend had spent with the heretical Christian group in Mumbai had imbued her with a very distorted view of Christianity. Thus, he felt the need to go back to basics and acquaint his fiancée with the essential doctrines of the Bible before marrying her. Her mind has been filled with a lot of deceptive devilish ideas and her understanding darkened with many heretical teachings such as replacement theology, liberal theology, health and wealth or prosperity gospel, signs and wonders, slain in the spirit, holy laughter, and other more of such false teachings. To free his Indian girlfriend's mind from those heretical teachings, her American boyfriend decided to start from scratch and teach her the pivotal doctrines of the Bible. He decided to begin with the doctrine of original sin, and then salvation, the work of the Holy Spirit in the believer's life, the nature of Christ and Israel and the Church. Michael believes that if his beloved fiancée can understand and master those important doctrines, then she can read the Bible by herself, and no one can deceive her anymore. The American lover Michael is supremely patient with his beloved Indian girlfriend Christina. He taught her the main doctrines of the Bible, precept upon precept, precept upon precept, line upon line, line upon line, here a little and there a little. When the lovely former Miss World Aphrodite Krishna Khan became a good Christian believer, her American lover, the handsome celibate boy, Michael Lewinsky, married her in his church and changed her name to Christina Lewinsky. Finally, Christina married her lover, the complete Jew, Michael, in the same church where she embraced Christianity and was baptized. It seems to be the final shore on her raging seas and her last port of call after a long and painful trip on the voyage of Ifat Khan, the Indian slum girl. If it were not for her lover and her spiritual boyfriend, she would have suffered and died a lonely and painful death in the filthy cell of the Mumbai mental hospital, in the city where she was born into a destitute Muslim family in a slum in India. After their marriage, the intimate lovers Christina and Michael continued to live in a beautiful big mansion, which they built in the little town where they had met for the first time. They continued to be committed Christians and attended the church regularly. If it is not for the fact that we live on a cursed planet, full of fallen human beings and amid an evil society, where sinners and sins abound, one may end the narration of Ifat Khan's life story with the phrase, "They lived happily ever after." But a happy ending can never be realized in this life. It is possible only in fiction and fairy tales. This story will be continued in Book 5 under the title, The Tears of God. About the author of this novel. Dr. Ahmed is an author and scholar. He has 5 university certificates, a BA, MA, and PhD in philosophy and comparative studies of religions from India, and a Bachelor and Master of Religious Studies and Philosophy from Canada. He was born and brought up as a Muslim, but through his study of philosophy and comparative studies of religions, he converted to Christianity. He has a unique writing style that can break through any religious, social, and cultural barriers and reveal the truth as it is. Moreover, his books are based on first-hand eyewitnesses because he witnessed those dire conditions of Muslim women with his own eyes. He has written 25 books, but so far has published 10 of them. His books have been written in English and translated by him into Arabic. All of his books are on the issues of women in Muslim societies and terrorism in Islam. His novels are available to listen to for free while he reads them in his voice in English and Arabic.